Hi there, welcome back to another Crypto Dave video. So in today's video I'm going to go through the drift hack, an overview of kind of what happened, a brief overview of what happened, and then talking about potentially what is going to happen next. So I think that's probably most interesting for people that were caught up in this. I myself was caught up in this. I had just shy of 50,000 in their perps engine, nothing in the vaults but in their kind of perps engine. So I too was caught up in this, but let's go through what kind of happened and what the potential next steps could be. So essentially on the 1st of April, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware, approximately $285,000 of crypto was drained from Drift. There's some really good write-ups, including a couple from the official team. So I'll put links to those in the description below, but a mixture of social engineering, compromising multi-sigs, durable nonces, and setting up essentially a kind of fake kind of liquidity pool with a kind of like, sort of like a fake kind of asset. A mixture of all these things allowed the hackers, which most people believe are potentially North Korean, to drain essentially 280,000. I think one of the interesting kind of things was that they have a multi-sig setup. It's got a 2 of 5 multi-sig, so 2 of those 5 members of that multi-sig have to sign these transactions, and they were essentially duped into signing malicious kind of transactions. The other issue is that some people are not happy with is that there was no time lock on these kind of like wallets. So the minute they were kind of compromised, essentially everything could be drained from the Drift kind of protocol, certainly from their vaults and the vast majority from their perps engine. So there was no kind of time lock in which the team could try and get control back. The other thing that people are not happy with, because most of this money, once it was kind of taken, was kind of laundered over a period of around 6 hours. And I think of the 280, I think somewhere in the region of 230 million of that was moved through Circle's cross-chain protocol via USDC. And Circle did nothing to kind of freeze these assets. And I think a lot of people were slightly unhappy with that, particularly as Circle have a habit of freezing kind of accounts. They've frozen accounts even fairly recently for various kind of like civil lawsuits and stuff like that. So people were relatively unhappy that, it wasn't an immediate thing. It wasn't like they had like 10 minutes to act. This happened over a period of around 6 hours. That the money was essentially moved, swapped between different tokens, and then cross-chain over to Ethereum. And it's sat, I currently believe, in 4 different Ethereum addresses. What next? And I think this is probably most interesting to people. As I said, I'll put some links down to some really good kind of write-ups about what happened in the description below. But what a lot of people want to know is what next. And to be fair, the contact from the team has been pretty poor. I was on their Discord group before this kind of happened. There's been essentially nothing that's come through the kind of Discord group. A lot of unhappy people, obviously, but through their official channels on X, they've given an account of kind of what happened, and they've given a couple of kind of updates, basically kind of saying, we're working with security team, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, with some very, very kind of vague stuff about how they might kind of come back. But what people want to know is that, $285 million, is there any way that they can kind of make their users kind of good? So let's run through some of the possible kind of outcomes. So firstly, 325 million in total value locked between before the hack and after the hack. So they've lost 325 million in total value locked, of which 285-ish of that was money stolen by hackers. So that's almost 59%, so almost 60% of their total value kind of locked, they have lost. Now, what are the kind of possible outcomes? A few people have suggested, can they cover the losses with fees? Now, looking at what they're making, it's been calculated somewhere between 17 and 28 years, I think it was. So you're looking at maybe 25 years of kind of fees, and that's if they had very few expenses, no kind of expensive kind of team, hardware, stuff like that. So essentially they cannot cover these kind of losses with fees. Few people have talked about the Drift token. Could the Drift token be used to kind of cover losses? Essentially, as we stand at the moment, the Drift token is currently around 10% of the total value lost, and the fully diluted valuation of that kind of token pushes that maybe up another 10%, but you're still looking at maybe 20% of the total value lost. So they can't really use the Drift token to do it. The only asset that they really have is DSOL, which is still on their kind of balance sheet and was essentially untouched. And this is Drift kind of locked SOL. liquid staking kind of token, just like MSO or something like that. And they currently have just shy of 220 million worth of that, which is around 76% of the total losses. So they have enough DSOL potential on their balance sheet to cover 75%, 3/4 of the kind of total losses. But that would essentially mean just kind of closing down the protocol, socializing the kind of losses against that. Now, I think the way things are at the moment, I think, a lot of people would be pretty happy to get 3/4 of it back. I don't think that's potentially going to happen. There are a few other things that they could do. They could take, they could look to borrow. They could look to take loans. It's an outside, very, very outside, which won't happen, chance that Ethereum could be persuaded to essentially kind of like freeze those kind of addresses and refund the kind of like money back to the kind of team. It's not going to happen. I mean, they have history with the DAO hack, but that they're never going to do that for a individual kind of protocol on a competitor's chain. So I don't think that's a starter. So what will happen? I mean, we will have to wait and see. There's a few ideas out there, whether they try and sort of make people whole over a period of time. I imagine if they try and do this, maybe people will be partially kind of recompensed, and there'll be some kind of lockups or sliding scale where they'll try and use maybe a mixture of their kind of their own tokens and fees and various other kind of like incentives, where the longer you kind of hold, maybe the more you kind of get back. But I think the chance of getting a substantial amount back of what was kind of lost is probably minimal. It also depends about how they spread out the kind of losses. So the last I saw, I think the vaults, essentially all the vaults were 100% kind of gone. I think the perps and the trading side of things, I think it was about 86%. So potentially there's 14% of people that just have money on the trading side that could be there. But it really depends how they choose to kind of socialize those losses, whether it's kind of like just divvy it out amongst everybody, no matter what kind of function or service that you were using on Drift. We shall find out, and hopefully maybe in the next week or so we shall start to get an idea about what Drift are doing. The other thing they could do is just essentially become insolvent. They could kind of pay back whatever they can with whatever assets they've got a list and disappear off into the night. So the conclusion. So not great news, I think. I think the idea of getting a substantial chunk of it back in the short term is probably quite minimal. I'm really interested to see what the Drift team come up with over the next kind of few months, whether maybe they get some support from Solana Foundation or something like that, to try and kind of like get back, maybe kind of like giving some of the money back that was kind of lost, and then try and kind of like relaunch some of their kind of like some of their kind of protocols and stuff like that. Maybe they don't do the vaults, but they get the perps engine, which was a big source of their fees back and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, and I'll do an update video once we know what they're kind of proposing. But the Drift hack, it was probably the largest kind of hack of the year so far. One of the most important DeFi events, I think, just in general the year so far, because it damaged multiple layers. So you had the initial reduction in Drift TVL, so the removal of the kind of vaults that were the majority of their kind of product. Secondly, it shut down their perps engine, which is where a lot of their fees came from, revenue came from. And then on top of that, it had a broader kind of like effect across the kind of industry. So there were a number of protocols that were relying on Drift as well. So there's probably, last I heard, probably close to 24 kind of protocols who had stuff in Drift vaults and various other bits of their functionality and kind of software. And you can see that by just the Solana DeFi ecosystem as a whole. It was around 980 odd, but just shy of $1 billion was removed in TVL from the Solana ecosystem in 24 hours. So that's like 3 times what was lost, or over 3 times what was lost in the initial kind of hack. So that's it for today. Let me know if you were affected below. I'm interested to know what you think will happen. If you are interested in other videos, you've got any suggestions of videos that you'd like me to cover, please let me know in the comments below. If you can give me a thumbs up and a like, that would be fantastic. As I mentioned a few videos ago, I'm back after several years of the channel kind of lying dormant, and I'm not getting much traction at all with these kind of early videos. I will keep at it, and as I said in my first video back, I've got a 4-year kind of plan, so I will be producing videos for 4 years, but Any likes, any comments, anything like that, you know, any shares would be very much appreciated. Hopefully I will see you on the next video. Hopefully not too many of you were affected by this, but have a great day. See you on the next video. Take care. Bye bye.